secrets lie behind the doors of Pawn Star's famous shop. Is the relationship between Chumlee and Rick Harrison as strong as it seems, or has tension been building for years? Fans have been speculating about drama behind the scenes for years, but no one expected Chumlee the shop's fun-loving prankster to finally come clean with the truth. Why has he been quiet for so long? And why is he speaking out now? This revelation is more than just a shop talk show. It could change everything you thou. The rumor that Austin Chumlee Russell had been fired from Pawn Stars spread like wildfire on social media. Fans were crazy trying to figure out why Russell had been fired from the popular History Channel show. The rumors got even worse when fans noticed that he deleted old posts and changed his Instagram bio. But Russell wasn't going to let the rumors get the best of him. He answered the phone with his trademark humor and asked Rick Harrison about it. Rick walked into the gold and silver pawn shop and recorded the whole conversation for his Instagram story. "Rick, there's a rumor that I got fired," Chumlee said in a casual but pointed tone. Rick barely looked up from the antique he was looking at and replied in his usual direct way, "You didn't get fired." Of course, Chumlee wasn't going to leave it at that. "Do you wish you could fire me?" he asked. Rick's blank stare told everyone what he was thinking, and he didn't say a word. Chumlee proved once again why he's an important part of the Pawn Star family. But things were a little more complicated off-screen. Rick and Chumlee's relationship has always been a strange mix of tolerance and frustration. The two have been making people laugh for over 15 years with their funny banter and weird chemistry, but when the cameras stop rolling, Rick likes to stay away. As the grumpy captain of the Pawn Star ship, Rick has often hinted that while Chum's antics are best enjoyed in small amounts, there's no denying the success they've built together since the show's premiere in 2009. Pawn Stars has been a hit on the History Channel with 21 seasons of strange items, historical deep dives, and lots of laughs. Even after the 21st season ended in mid-2023, Rick Corey Harrison, Chumlee, and Harrison hit the road for Pawn Stars Do America, a spin-off that took them across the country in search of rare treasures. By early 2024, back in Las Vegas, filming for season 22 of the original show was already underway, and the trio went back to the gold and silver pawn shop, where fans could expect more of Chumlee's strange humor. Like his famous question, "Is this worth more if I lick it?" For Chumlee, working at the shop wasn't just a job, it was a way of life. His friendship with Corey goes back to elementary school when they got into a fight because of a misunderstanding. When Corey's sister had accused Chumlee of bullying her, but it turned out Chumlee. After the fight, Corey and Chumlee became inseparable. Their friendship led to Chumlee's job in the pawn shop and on the show at age 21. Chumlee started at the shop as an intern while working 2 jobs. During the day, he managed a Quiznos that Rick owned, and at night he learnt the ropes at the gold and silver for 135 days straight, flipping sandwiches and selling antiques. When Pawn Star started in 2009, he became a full-time pawnbroker, and Chumlee became a fan right away. His goofy antics, pop culture knowledge, and occasional strokes of brilliance made him a fan favorite. He may have started out as comic relief, but over the years he carved out a niche for himself, earning respect from even Rick, who was always skeptical. Outside of the shop, Chumlee's life has had its ups and downs. He married Olivia in a private ceremony last year, which he celebrated by losing 100 pounds. But their long-distance relationship while Olivia studied at USCB while he worked in Vegas has been hard. He often talks about his. Even though things have been hard, Chumlee stays positive on social media, writing heartfelt messages about missing little things like waking up next to his wife or sharing dinner. "Knowing we have the rest of our lives together gives me peace," he wrote in a recent post. Chumlee wasn't just the comic relief on Pawn Stars, he was the show's fun-loving, goofy heart. He brought a whole new vibe to the pawn shop world. At first, Harrison kept him in the background, but they quickly realized they couldn't do without him. Chumlee wasn't just the guy making jokes and looking lost. He had this way of making people smile even when he didn't seem to know what he was doing. Chumlee wasn't as lost as he looked. Sure, he was the guy making jokes with Rick and Corey, but when he casually said he was good at pinball machines, fans were like, "Wait, what?" Chumlee was full of surprises. Behind that goofy grin was someone who knew a lot more than people gave him credit for. By the time Pawn Stars, Chumlee had been working at the shop for about 5 years before the show started. But his popularity went through the roof. He wasn't afraid to ask Rick and Corey funny and strange questions that made fans laugh and take notice. And when it came to the antiques, Chumlee wasn't just there to make jokes. He cared about the history behind the things that came into the shop. It wasn't all about the deal for him. He wanted to know the story behind it. Oh, and let's not forget that. During that time, Rick, the shop's mastermind, made sure everything ran smoothly. He had a vision for both the pawn shop and the show, and he worked like crazy to make sure everything went as planned. But the best thing about Rick was his relationship with Chumlee. In an interview, Chumlee joked that Rick would tell him what to do, and he'd act like he wasn't hearing it. Rick laughed and agreed, saying that they had a great working relationship, even though Chumlee sometimes disappeared when they were supposed to be working together. Fans loved watching Rick and Chumlee's back and forth joking around like old friends. But the magic didn't always happen off-screen. Fans started to notice that Rick and Chumlee weren't exactly best friends when the camera stopped rolling. They had funny moments on-screen, but not so much off-screen. This made fans wonder what was going on behind the scenes. One episode showed the tension between the two as Chumlee was in charge of a deal for a rare coin and doing. He hired a professional to look at it and negotiated with the seller like a pro. Everything was going as planned until Rick swooped in and took over. Chumlee was not happy, as expected, and tried to take back control, but Rick wouldn't let him. In the end, the seller walked away without making a deal, and Chumlee was furious, calling Rick a tightwad under his breath. Rick, ever the businessman, fired back, "You'll never understand this business if you don't get it together." Fans could see the tension in Rick's voice at that moment. There was tension all the time because Rick, Chumlee, and the rest of the crew often disagreed on how the shop should be run. The old man would question Chumlee's intelligence and Rick's choices, and it was clear that everyone had their own way of doing things. So even though the show made it look like they were all one big happy family, things were a little more complicated. Now let's talk about what Chumlee was doing. He wasn't just hanging out with Rick. Laughing at the pawn shop, he opened Chumlee's Candy on the Boulevard in 2017. It was full of nostalgic sweets, his candy brand jerky, and even toothpicks. The reviews were great and fans loved it. Chumlee was living his best life, posting about his candy empire on Instagram. People thought he was killing it. But not everything was sweet in his life. In 2016, the police found unregistered guns at his house, which got him into a lot of trouble with the law. During an investigation into an assault, the bad press didn't sit well with Rick and caused some tension between the two. Rick didn't like the bad press it brought to the show, and Chum's legal problems made their already troubled relationship even worse. But Chumlee kept going, and maybe that's what made him so likable. He was always surprising people. If there's one thing we can all agree on, it's this. Chumlee may have started out as the funny guy, but he didn't end up that way until 2019. Even though Chumlee's minor legal problems stayed on his record, his relationship with Rick off-screen wasn't the smoothest. Fans noticed that Rick didn't have a perfect record. But there's more to this tension than meets the eye. For starters, Chumlee started getting a lot more attention than he thought he would. He's the kind of guy that everyone can relate to, like a friend who's always up for hanging out even though he's not exactly a rocket scientist. People couldn't deny Chumlee's charm. His down-to-earth personality made you want to invite him to a barbecue. As he became more popular, some fans thought Rick might have been jealous, but there's more to it than that. Chumlee's love of living large didn't help matters. He has a net worth of $5 million and isn't afraid to show it off. He's partying with his crew while blasting his favorite songs, while Rick's out there trying to keep the pawn. Rick is very concerned with money and making sure that the shop doesn't make too many bad choices. when Chumlee's careless spending caused a $20,000 mistake that didn't sit well with Rick. You can imagine his face when he found out how much Chumlee's impulse purchases cost the shop. But some people have a simpler theory. Maybe they just didn't have time to hang out after the show. Rick has a whole BBQ joint. Roland Smoke BBQ was voted the best barbecue in Nevada, and he's also working on other TV projects under Rick Harrison Productions. Chumlee is also busy making personalized videos for Cameo fans, so it's not surprising that they didn't have time for those late-night pizza chats. Russell at the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop isn't known for being the most reliable person, but every once in a while, Corey and Rick are ready for the next bad choice. Everyone is left wondering if Chumlee is a genius in disguise or just incredibly lucky. The day began with a customer carrying a pair of early Black Sabbath records. Not just any records, these were on the original Vertigo label, and one of them still had its very rare poster attached. Chumlee was immediately interested, and after some haggling and dramatic sighs from the seller, he walked away with the records for $140. Now, if you know Rick, you know that he can spot a bad deal from a mile away. Walked in just as Chumlee was wrapping up the records and asked what was going on with a raised eyebrow. Determined to prove his purchase wasn't a disaster, Chum called in an expert. To everyone's surprise, especially Rick's, the records were worth $1,200. For once, Chumlee had struck gold and was happy to brag about it. But Chumlee wasn't done yet. Spencer, a regular at the shop, came in with a Philippine insurrection knife that had an original label and looked like something out of a history book. Corey came in and took one look at the knife and said it was a $200 mistake. That's when things got interesting. In typical Chumlee fashion, he bet Corey that the knife was worth $600 or more. If Chumlee were right, Corey would have to walk the shop's dog Pinky in a tutu. And if Corey were right, Chumlee would lose his ponytail. The stakes were high, so they rushed the knife to an expert who gave it a perfect grade. So, the knife's historical value was estimated to be. Corey Harrison's weight loss, Chumlee started working out and gave up processed foods, losing over 100 pounds by 2014. He believed in moderation, but it was hard for him to stick to a strict diet. By 2016, he had gained 50 pounds back. When his weight reached 350 pounds in 2019, he decided to have gastric sleeve surgery, which removed 80% of his stomach. The results were amazing. By October 2021, Chumlee weighed 190 pounds and seemed determined to stay that way.